And I personally think it's fascinating if there is a 1% chance of this being the other way, because it's such a big deal. So big deals, small probabilities are a reason to freak out. That's the point of the video. I completely disagree with a common narrative lately that everything is too sensationalized and we don't need to panic. Listen to this.
And which countries might be spared, while other highly credible sources reassure us there's a 98% chance we'll be fine. Exaggerated language, selective framing, and misleading urgency make it easy for science reporting to veer into sensationalism. The result? More clicks, more panic, and less actual understanding.
Less actual understanding. So I'm here to give you a better understanding than what those scientists here are oftentimes proposing. It's not just about asteroids. It's also about a scientific dogma that they have, that you need to be certain for discoveries and so on, right? Careful, don't say it's important until you have like 99 5 sigma confidence and whatnot. And they are so afraid about like talking about like actually making like actually doing the hype. There is no hype. Everybody's just saying don't hype, don't hype. You always hear don't hype, but there's too little hype about certain topics. And then there's also the misunderstanding of things, right? There might be reason to not hype things, but it's not what a lot of those guys are actually thinking about when they are thinking about, we need to be like super certain before we say something, and we don't want the public to think that it's one way and it's not that way because we don't have proof yet. It's not about proof. What I'm saying is we need to look at it a completely different way that they don't. We need to look at things in the way they are. They have a probability to be the case, and that's what needs to be reported. Okay, taking the asteroid news, I mean, the correct headline here would be, there's an asteroid flying nearby Earth, and it has an expected value of costing 500 lives. I actually did the math back then, but it's now no longer relevant because it's even less important now that we know it's not 2%. Obviously, the expected value headline is nobody's gonna understand that either, but that's what we should actually be reporting about. We shouldn't be just saying, oh, you're 99% safe. In 99% of the cases, nothing is gonna happen. That's also framing it in a very, very, very misleading way. And I think the current narrative is way more guided into a way where we frame it in this way to not cause any panic. There's no panic. Like everybody's saying just, oh, it's not gonna happen. They don't believe, even if you would tell them it is that way, they won't believe you anyway. There's no, but everybody's so afraid about causing panic, and so we saw that in with COVID. And let's say there would be this asteroid that he's talking about, right? It had 2%. That's a massive chance of hitting Earth. It was the biggest chance, like in our lifetime, right? This is it wasn't that much of an EV life expectancy because it's a really small asteroid. It's big enough, like it would be a city destroyer, right? So it's big news. That's for sure. That said, the life expectancy loss overall is not that much, because in grand scheme of things, like a city destroyed with a 2% chance, and the 2% chance of it hitting Earth is not it hits a city, right? So I actually did that math, and it's not that dramatic. But let's say it would be a killer asteroid that would actually be a threat to humanity, and would have even a 0.1% chance of hitting Earth, right? They would be saying, oh, 99%, 99.9% of the time, like, it's certainly not gonna happen. It's even like 2 sigma, 3 sigma to not hit Earth. But if there is a small chance of like completely destroying the all of humanity and all our ancestors that are even coming, then it's a big fucking deal. And yeah, then at that point, I mean, I did a asteroid versus volcanoes video where I compare the EV danger of those in that way. But anyway, that's not even the point. The other point is it's not about asteroids, but also like the recent discovery of life on K218b. That's another thing. Like I saw an interview with a scientist, but she was being asked basically, well, they found those signs, like they're 99% sure, right? And or 99.9% sure, and she was basically saying, yeah, sure, but would you also go into an airplane with that kind of chances? And that is completely not the point to not freak out about this, because there's no panic. If you would announce today that aliens exist on some planet far away, you could even say like aliens are on the way to us. We know it. This wouldn't cause a panic. But okay, but let's say you announce it. It's safe. We know it for sure. There wouldn't be any like panic or whatever, right? So there's no reason to downplay this, first of all. So there's no reason to say it's not, basically to say something it is 99.9% sure, and then in the end it's not, because we need to be super sure to announce this. That is not the reason, because if it would be 99.9% sure, it's certainly a big deal and to freak out about this. And I don't need to go into an airplane because if I'm wrong about the belief of this being the case, then nothing happens. Like I'm not. It's not an airplane crash for me. So this is like the stupidest comparison she could have done, right? And what she actually should have said, though, if you want to find out something about that is very unlikely in the first place. And it's hard to say how likely life is, right? But let's say we have 1 million planets, we can look at it, and it's very unlikely to find that gas. And then, okay, you look at all of those, and you see there is a signal for that gas. But since it's very unlikely to begin with, having a 99.9% chance is actually not that great, because in some of those planets you will find that signal, right? It's not. This is just an example simplified to get the point across. It's not necessarily that this is the case, but the thing is, you need 5 sigma for this, not because you need to be super certain to announce aliens. Because even if you know that, like, there's no way of actually telling that there's aliens there, or like aliens, it's life, right? I'm exaggerating here again. Microbial life, right? That's what we're talking about. But that's the next thing. They were like saying, "Oh, we're certainly only talking about microbial life. There's no aliens there." Well, you can't necessarily. Well, there might be reasons for it, but you don't know this. The point he's trying to get across here is that there's no proof for any other aliens. Like the proof that we're talking about here is about any sort of microbial life, right? The microbials that put this, but that doesn't mean like there's certainly no other things. Well, there's some reasons to say that it's not, but we don't know that, right? And saying things in a certain way just to not cause panic is also stupid. We always would need to look at this with some chance, but it is about a microbial life, right? And we can't be even sure of that, because it could be a natural process that we don't know of. So that's even that if it's like 5 sigma, that's okay. There's likely life down out there, maybe. But I'm sure that's going to be debated until I don't know. I mean, it's hard to actually get something real from exoplanets. My point is that if it's a small chance, we don't need to be super certain. But if it's a huge fucking deal, like an Earth-destroying asteroid would be, like discovering aliens would be less to an extent, but on the positive side, let's say, then we don't need to be super sure of it. Like any indications of this being even 2% likely now from like maybe a prior of like 0.1% or something is big news, and it should be like there should be hype around this. And like I'm not even like talking the 99.9% or whatever, because I don't think that's the case, that this is saying that this is 99% likely, or I don't think in the end it will turn out to be 99% likely. There's a bigger chance that this is not live than that, given all considerations about that. And that's why we need 5 Sigma to begin with, to even like start talking about this in some sort of okay, it's likely way, and not the plane crash scenario that she meant. However, like even increasing the chance from 0.1% to 10% is a huge deal. We need to like look at it more and maybe try to figure out how else could we like do experiments about this and investigate and so on. So that's what we should be talking about. There should be hype around this, but there's always this like, oh no, we don't want to cause hype. And then there's like scientists also are like super trained to have this dogmatic view of proof and not proof, in sort of like, okay, you need, for the scientific method, you need this like 2 sigma for normal discoveries and 5 sigma for this discovery or whatever. And if it's like only 94%, then there's like basically a nothing burger, and you can like do like it basically says nothing. Your studies has failed. But it's 96%, then you can say, okay, there's an effect. Hooray. And then for discoveries you need 5 sigma or whatever, and if it's only 4 sigma, then it's like, okay, you can't tell anything. But that's just not the case. We just need to like, or we don't need to do anything. I'm just saying that I think it's pretty stupid to see it in this dogmatic way. The next thing is history, really, where you are basically being attacked if you even consider saying something as being hype or whatever. If you even like bring up the possibility of something being the case, like earlier civilizations or whatnot, because there's no proof. Yes, there's no proof. That's not the point, right? That like any possibility of this being 0.1% is actually huge, because it's such a mind-blowing thing. And even like if this has a small chance, or this chance of this increases a little bit to 0.5%, then this is I think a huge hype and a huge reason to look more into this, and actually do. But no, you only always have to have proof. And before the proof, we're certainly not gonna even like look at this or investigate this. And a good example of this is, I think, in Malta. So this is what I was talking about from Michael Button. I think he has a very good view on this.
Tiny time frame. I mean, where are the precursors? Where is the slow build-up of technology and ideas, the trial and error? You'd expect to see cruder efforts, the development of skills, not immediately jumping to such impressive construction at the very beginning of their civilization. To put it simply, if the mainstream view is to be believed, then this leap represents the fastest development of construction technology and societal organization ever seen in human history, and it simply doesn't make sense. And it's not like they could have brought these ideas with them. Even with its accepted date, Gigantea is by far the oldest megalithic site in the Mediterranean, and was the oldest on Earth until the discovery of the even more mysterious Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. So how did this culture go from zero to master engineers, builders, and astronomers in only 200 years? In my opinion, that just doesn't make sense. But it doesn't stop there. The orthodox view claims that over the next 1,000 years in total, this culture were absolutely prolific in their temple building, somehow building at least 30 megalithic temple sites all across the tiny Maltese island.
Yeah, so that is the point, right? That, okay, sure, they could have maybe done this, but it's somewhat unlikely in itself. And you could also explain it in a different way, but it's an unproven way. And hence, it's the scientific view, and my point is that they represent this view as way too certain, right? They say it has to be them because there is no other proof for other civilizations. But and the other civilizations, maybe, okay, there is no proof and whatnot, right? So it's unlikely in itself, maybe, but given that this scenario is also unlikely, now we have to look at maybe at the other probability. So you have to actually always use all the data that you have and make estimates. I don't say you have to, but I think it would be a good way to do this. There's certainly no proof for it, and maybe the other scenario is more likely, sure. And that's the thing, like, I'm not claiming proof, and I don't think like a lot of people that people are so like mad at when they say something are claiming proof or whatever. But like even thinking about the possibility of this is apparently forbidden or something. So yeah, I don't know, like just maybe try to estimate probabilities for each scenario, and then I personally think it's fascinating if there is a 1% chance of this being the other way, because it's such a big deal. So big deals, small probabilities are a reason to freak out. That's the point of the video. And then there's other scenarios where it's arguably, I think, likely that something is different, right? But there's no proof for it. We are not like anywhere close to 99 or 90, even 95% certain, or like for discovery you need to be like 5 sigma or whatever. And there is no proof for it. But if it's like 60% certain, or like if I would estimate it to be 60% the case, then yeah, that is my basic assumption. That doesn't mean I'm saying this is the case for sure. And if you're like not believing in it or whatever, then you're wrong. This is not the case, right? It's just like, okay, it's a 60% probability of this being the case. And yeah, and obviously sometimes it's also hard to estimate probabilities, or impossible even. So obviously it's not a good scientific method or whatever, but that's my main point, that I think the scientific method in this case also has like some holes and dogmatic things in there that's not healthy.